Atomic batteries to power, turbines to speed. This is the Uncolored Podcast. My name's Kevin Metcalf. Thanks for tuning in for another episode of the Uncolored Podcast. We're going to do something a little bit different today. Just me, talking to nobody. I'm going to do something a little bit different today. Normally, I take the first part of the podcast. I'm trying to work out this idea. I call it the big idea. And I think it's important. And I think it maps everything out, I think. But it probably doesn't. But so far it's worked. And so far it's making sense. And I continue to use this podcast to work out the idea. But I'm going to do something different today. In the second part of the podcast, what I usually do is have the Uncolored Sports segment, where I take sports and try to extract something meaningful out of some sports story. Because I think sports is the best analogy for life. There's a lot of lessons to learn. And that's what I do at the back end of the podcast. But I'm not going to do that this time because I got so many stories. You know, I watch sports entirely too much. And so what I'll do is if I see something that I think is important, I'll record it and take notes and do a little research on it. And then I kind of put it away for the end of the podcast, but it's starting to build up. So I'm just going to do the whole thing. It's a from top to bottom, front to back, uncolored sports. It's what everybody loves. Or the one person who may be listening to this. So the first topic is something that, it has to do with the NCAA. It's the administrative body of college sports. And it seems like a lot of people have a problem today with it's not today. It's always been the case. I've heard this for many, many years. But nowadays, it seems when everybody's jockeying to be the victim of something, this is the latest entry in the woe is me of life. And, here's the thing. I just wish everybody would just stop pretending that they give a damn. Because I really think nobody cares about this issue. I know it's been to court, and I know there's people who talk about it. But I'm almost certain that nobody really gives a damn because they could have fixed this whole thing yesterday if they wanted to. They could have fixed it last year, the year before that. And I'll give you the solutions to it. And when you hear it, you go, yeah, why don't they just do that? It would all be done. But before I get to that, I just want to, I don't want to pick on my dad. Listen, I love my dad. He is the best human being on the planet as far as I'm concerned. He's my hero. I love my dad. And it's really not him. My dad is really just emblematic of, I just think society at large. There's this weird pretense that everybody's a victim of something. And so we're watching the March Madness, the Final Four, the NCAA tournament, happen to be at his house. And he turns and makes a comment. He goes, "Oh, these players, these poor college kids ain't getting paid, and the coaches get millions." And I hear this everywhere. Joy Taylor on the Colin Cowherd show. The players aren't getting. When who's the guy from the Michigan State Spartans? The coach there. I can't remember his name. But there was a point where he got in his kid's face and was. He was going after this poor kid. And the players were holding, what the hell? The name's at the top of my head and I can't come up with it. It's killing me. But anyway, the guy's been a coach for years. And the kid wasn't getting back on defense and he was just... It looked like a street fight. It looked like the coach wasn't going to hit him or anything. But, he was very angry. And let the kid know it. But you can tell it's like a family thing. It wasn't. You can tell that it was a family circumstance. The kids were in there talking to the coach, talking to the kid. It was just like a family working out their issues. So it wasn't the horror to mankind that everybody in the media tried to make it out to be. And I remember the next day, who's the guilty white liberal on First Things First, Nick Wright. First thing he said was, well, the kids aren't getting paid. Why is he yelling them at that? Like if the kid was getting paid, then it would have been okay. He wouldn't have had a problem with the coach yelling at him. I got to hold on. Let me figure out that guy's name because it's bugging me now. Hold on. Tom Izzo. That's the guy's name. So everybody was mad at Tom Izzo and Nick Wright and Joy Taylor from Joy Taylor. She's the news person on Colin Cowherd's show. And she says the same thing. Well, the players aren't getting, the coach is getting millions and the players aren't getting paid. So why is he yelling at them? Like if the player was getting paid, then she would have been okay with it. Of course she wouldn't have been okay with it. But for some reason, it's in the head of people that these kids aren't getting paid. And you know what? I got to tell you, I don't care. I used to be of the opinion that they should not get paid. And I still kind of lean that way. I just think business-wise, it's a dumb decision for the coaches for the schools to pay these kids who are going to be there for just months. But on the other hand, I don't really give a rat's ass because I also agree with the opinion that, listen, if you've got a tradable skill, if somebody wants to pay you for whatever the hell you do, you can go get paid for it. The problem is that's what the system is now. If there's a kid in college in basketball who wanted to get paid and they're 16, 17, there's all kinds of places in Europe that would pay them. There's the developmental league. I said that weird. It's the Gatorade League now, the G League they call it. They can go play in the G League if they want to and get paid. Now they're not going to get a lot. But the idea that kids can't get paid is not an NCAA rule. It's a CBA rule. It's the collective bargaining agreement for the NBA that makes kids have to go play for a year before they can be eligible for the draft. And I think the same thing's true in college football. Right? So it's the professional leagues that are keeping the kids out, not the NCAA. And as far as the NCAA getting paid, paying these kids, here's the reason why I think that the coaches get millions of dollars and the kids don't. Because it's the coaches that bring the kids to the school. It's Coach K, or Krzyzewski with a K. It's Tom Izzo. It's who's the guy at North Carolina? The coach in Kentucky. There's about 10 or 15 coaches that have the name and have the pedigree that when they walk into the living room of a prospect, the prospect's going to say yes. They're going to be okay with it. And that's what they're getting paid millions for. Because they're bringing these blue chip players to the school. The kids, if they're any good, if they really do have professional level value, they're going to be there for a year. What are you going to pay them for? No, nobody would know who Zion Williams is. And I mean publicly. The wonks who watch these kids all the time in AAU, they know who they are. But nobody was talking about Zion Williams for half the year. And it wasn't until the last half of the season that everybody was talking about Zion Williams because he was going to Duke, because he was playing for Coach K. That's why Coach K is getting all that money, because Duke and Coach K elevated the profile of Zion Williams to just some kid who could jump out of the gym at AAU games. So there's value in being in that organization. And that's why, in my opinion, that's why you're going to pay a coach millions of dollars, because they're going to bring you those kids. And if they're there for a year or 6 months or 2 years or whatever it is, then that's the value that the school is giving the kids. Because again, nobody'd know who Zion Williams was if he wasn't at Duke or some other big name college. Listen, Steph Curry played at Davidson. Nobody thought he was any good. And I remember seeing him in the NCAA tournament, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago. I don't remember how long ago it was. But you see, He took Davidson to the Final Four. I don't know if they'd ever even been there before. And he was just lighting it up. He was Steph Curry back then. And I'll tell you what, because he was at Davidson, I don't know what round he went in, or maybe a low first round, or maybe 6th or 7th. I don't know. He wasn't the first pick. But I bet you anything, if he was at North Carolina, if he was at Kentucky, if he was at Duke lighting it up that way, he'd be a number 1 pick. He would have gotten considerably more money to sign to the NBA if he was at a big name college rather than Davidson. So the point I'm making is it makes sense to pay a coach with a pedigree at a big name school millions of dollars because they're the ones who are bringing these athletes in. Whether or not this athlete is actually going to be worth that money, nobody knows. Listen, how many first round picks have turned out to be nothing? Just absolutely nothing. You can go football, basketball, just lighten it up in college. All the jerseys sell. They go to the professionals and nothing. Crapped out. I can't think of anybody right now, but trust me, there's a lot of them. So I get it. I understand why coaches don't pay kids. But as I said, if the kids work out a way that they get paid, that's fine too. For me, I don't care. You know, I've stopped watching all of the seasons. I used to watch from the first day in October and November. I was watching college basketball, college football every weekend. And I don't do that anymore because it's just, I don't know, because you don't know anybody, especially in college basketball. You used to have players that were there for 3 and 4 years and you knew who they were. And there was that name value and you wanted to see how they developed. You wanted to see how the team did the next year. That's just not the case anymore. And the only real reason to tune into college basketball is during the tournament. And even then, it's really the last couple of weeks. So the value is different. And I'm not arguing one way or the other. I'm simply saying I understand why the kids aren't getting paid. But if they wanted to get paid in college, they can do it. And I'll tell you how. It's very simple. And when you hear it, you go, yeah, I don't know what everybody's complaining about. And like I said, I'm at my dad's house and he turns to me and says, it's horrible that these kids aren't getting paid. And I'm like, well, first of all, let me play the clip. So this is Speak for Yourself. I think the best sports show on TV today, and almost ever. PTI used to be my sports, but they turned social justice, so I had to get out of that. But Jason Whitlock has this program called Speak for Yourself. He used to have Colin Cowherd on it. And I think Colin Cowherd, he doesn't like talking about serious stuff, so he got out of there. And Jason Whitlock is, I think, the best thing going in broadcasting. One, because he's honest. He's not afraid of controversy. He'll not only speak his opinion, boldly speak his opinion, but what I love is that his show, he has people who disagree with him, and they have a dialogue. And so you can hear both sides of the argument. And he keeps an open mind, and he's willing to hear other people's sides. It's unlike anything else, in my opinion. Usually what you get, again, which is why I stopped watching ESPN, is because everybody says the same thing. Everybody thinks that Colin Kaepernick is Jesus. Everybody thinks that Title IX was the best thing to ever happen. You don't hear anybody who has a different opinion on ESPN. But Jason Whitlock, thankfully, actually has different ideas, and he allows other people to share their ideas. So I love it, which made me very disappointed when I heard him have this take about the NCAA. Now, there's going to be 2 clips that I'm going to play. The first one I get, and I agree with him. His first complaint about the NCAA system is, well, he thinks the players should get paid. I disagree with him on that. But this particular issue was, what happened was there were a couple of, I don't know what they were. One person was, his name is Chuck Persons. And if you're old like me, you remember Chuck Person was the rifleman. He was one of the first players to demonstrate how lethal the 3-point line was. He was a spot up shooter for the Spurs, I think it was, later in his career, and he would just sit there and just knock down threes. So apparently he's working for some college, and he was involved in some scandal giving kids money. the feds got involved, and Chuck Person and there was a couple other guys who are now apparently having to go to federal prison for it, which I agree with Jason. It's a travesty of justice. So I'll play you that part first, and then I'll get to the second part. So as I said, I agree 100% with Jason. The feds have no business dealing with these NCAA rules because they're stupid rules to begin with. They're complicated. They don't serve the purpose that they're supposed to. And listen, it's not like you're dealing with Frank Nitti. There's no public, what do you call it? There's no harm to the public. What's the word I'm thinking of? I can't think of, nobody's threatened by this. Nobody's safety is threatened, by the payola going on in the college system. The feds have no business in it. So I agree with him there. But then Jason Whitlock does this thing that is so beneath him. I can't believe it. And I expect this from other, from other broadcasters that you hear all the time. But I was surprised to hear Jason Whitlock have this opinion. So so listen to this.
We talked last week with Joel, or maybe it was this week, about Walter Byers, who created the modern NCAA. And then as he saw it create more and more money, he wrote in his book and he started talking about speech, analogizing it to a plantation and the overseers making money. And so the reason why I'm comfortable making this analogy is because the guy that created the NCAA basically compared it to slavery. Yeah. And so to me, this is like criticizing Harriet Tubman.
Okay, to me, that's reprehensible. And I say that again, with all due respect. Jason Whitlock, I love his show and I love what he does. But he's too smart to make that comparison. Okay? When you compare slavery to kids playing basketball as that somehow being the same circumstance, it's misleading, and it's almost immoral, if you ask me, because slavery was the most horrific thing. And these kids playing basketball, not the same thing. If it's so horrific, right? If it's so horrific that these kids are not getting paid, why are you watching the games? Why are you betting on them? Why are you so entertained by the NCAA playoffs? I mean, it's got to be one or the other, right? Either it's a travesty and a horror that these kids aren't getting played or getting paid, or it's not that big of a deal and you find the game entertaining. I don't see you being horrified and entertained by it at the same time. And here's why the analogy is a terrible analogy. It's inconsistent. And I'll give you an example. If you're watching a game with somebody and they turn to you and say, hey, it's reprehensible. It's like slavery. These kids are playing basketball and not getting paid, right? And they've got their fingers crossed because they've got 15 NCAA brackets filled out and they're hoping one of them pays off. Okay, you can't have it both ways. It's inconsistent. Either it's morally reprehensible, like slavery, or it's pretty entertaining and you love it, right? If you worked at the SPCA all day, making sure animals are safe and finding them homes and feeding them and tending to their injuries, right? And then right after work, you run out to some unknown location, to some warehouse where they're having dogs fight to the death while you're betting on them. It's inconsistent. You can't have it both ways. Either it's morally reprehensible like slavery, or it's entertaining. Can't be both. That's why it's a terrible example. Nobody who thinks slavery is abhorrent would go out into the fields if they were back in the times of slavery, watching people be mistreated, murdered, mutilated, and all the horrors that went on, and then say, but this is terrible, but I'll tell you what, that guy can pick some damn cotton. He's really good at it. I'm picking him to pick the most cotton today. Got my fingers crossed. I've got $20 on him. You can't have it both ways. Either it's as morally reprehensible as slavery, or it's just entertaining and you really don't care that much. It's a talking point for you. It's a way to get ratings or make yourself seem like you are a really caring individual to somebody. But you can't care that much if you're taping all the games and rooting for your team to play and you think it's a reprehensible thing. Chances are you're like me. You really don't care that much. I mean, if they get paid, it's great. If they don't get paid, you don't care. Not really, because you're really enjoying the game. Or you're a sportscaster and you're talking about it and you're making money and getting ratings by talking about it. So just what I'm saying is stop the slavery comparisons. It's ignorant and nobody really believes it. Nobody really believes that college players not getting paid is like slavery. Nobody really believes that. All it is prostituting the horror that was slavery so you can get some ratings and a little attention. That's all that is. That's why I don't think they really care that much. I think it's something that people say for TV ratings or to look woke. That's the new religion today, is being woke. And to let everybody think that you're really some sensitive, caring person, when the fact is, I don't think you give a damn. Many of the parents who have their kids in this horrific system of slavery called the NCAA, since their kid could walk, they were putting the ball in their hands, hoping one day that they'd get a scholarship to do. You don't think that you could go to the Facebook pages and social media pages of some of these kids and see tons of pictures and whatever they do, tweets about, hey, look at my kid at Duke. Ooh-wee. Praise the Lord. He got into Duke. What a blessing. You don't think they're talking to their friends at the water cooler and say, hey, my kid's going to be playing this weekend. Yeah, see, I don't think they think it's like slavery either. I don't think the kids think it's like slavery. You know why? Because they don't have to show up if they don't want to. Couldn't do that if you were a slave. You couldn't go to the slave master and go, hey, listen, this whole thing you got us doing, I've been here for a month. You're beating the hell out of me. I'm not getting paid. I'm not getting fed. It's like slavery. I'm out. Right? The slave master wouldn't go, well, listen, good luck on your next endeavor. Go. Maybe you'll have better luck in the art program. Maybe you'll do better in band if this slavery thing isn't cut out for you. Yeah, I don't think you could do that if you were a slave. But here, any of these kids, if they do not like the setup, and here's the thing, they knew it before they got in. The parents knew it. Everybody knew what the NCAA was like before they scraped and fought and hoped and prayed to be a part of it. So I really don't think they think it's like slavery either. Now, again, whether they get paid or not, I don't care. I'm simply saying, can we stop all the BS pretending that we care? I don't think anybody gives a shit because they could have. I cursed. Sorry about that, Bappo. I really don't think they care because they could have fixed it, again, anytime they want to. And for Jason Whitlock to go that low, like I said, that was a disappointing moment for me. But listen, everybody does something goofy every time, so I don't hold it against them. But the guilty white liberals, I expect that from. Max Kellerman on ESPN, I expect that from him. Nick Wright on, First Things. I expect him to give those guilty white liberal takes. Max Kellerman thinks everything's like slavery. He can't wait to say something's like slavery, Max Kellerman. So I expect those people to do that. But Jason Whitlock, he's so much better than that. I was very disappointed that he did that. But let's fix the system. So I told you before, it's an easy fix, and it is. It's stupid how easy it was, or is. I shouldn't say was because they haven't done it yet, and they're not gonna do it. So I've got a buddy who was my sergeant and super smart. The guy, I don't even really think he's a human being. I think he's an android. He's got some kind of a computer brain. You can ask him about any kind of court case from 50 years ago, and he'll tell you everything, chapter and verse, the date, the section, all that stuff. So I was asking him about that, and he was telling me, oh, it's already been done before. It's been litigated and blah, blah, blah. And my thing was, forget the litigation. You don't have to litigate it. Look, all of the players, well, I don't even think, let's start with the professionals. So you've got NBA players, you've got football players, you've got all your sportscasters and broadcasters who pretend they give a damn that these kids aren't getting paid. Okay? All the Joy Taylors and the Nick Wrights of the world and the Max Kellermans. I figure between them, if they pull their money together, and I'm talking about just available money, not the money they need, just money that they don't know what to do with. Probably billions. Okay? That's the show everybody's excited about. I've never seen that show. But you can take that money and just say, hey, you know what? Let's get, I don't know, $3 million. And we'll pay the top 25, 30 players in the college system. We'll give them $100,000 not to play. The very best players will say, hey, for $100,000, you stay, you don't play this year. Because we want to talk to the NCAA. We want to change the rules. You don't think the NCAA would respond to that? You don't think if Nick Saban and his 4 or 5 blue chip recruits go, hey, you know what, we're not playing this year. You don't think that they would listen to that? Of course they would. But maybe they wouldn't. Didn't do this. In 2015, let me see, Missouri. The Missouri, I don't know what they are, the Wildcats or something like that. The Missouri football team in 2015, they were threatening not to play their football season that year over some, sham of a racial thing that somebody cooked up that turned out was totally bogus. There was some kid there that was supposedly going to go on what do you call those starving things where you don't eat? Meanwhile, his dad was making $9 million a year, right? But he wanted to play the victim too. Now, Missouri, I don't know that anybody cares about the Missouri football team who doesn't live in Missouri. And I mean, not just in Missouri. You have to live near the college to give a damn about the Missouri football team. It's a terrible team. Okay. They were threatening not to play. The NCAA were crapping in buckets. They were filling buckets full of crap. That's how scared they were. Because it's millions of dollars. It's millions of dollars that they lose. TV contracts, deals with Nike for the uniforms. The school depends on that money that they get. And if the players didn't play, and it's not just the Missouri team. Now you've got all of the kids, all of the teams of the colleges that have Missouri on their schedule that year. Done. What are they going to do? They can't show, Sanford and Son reruns. What are they going to do? Nothing. They'd lose all that money. And that's why everything that the Missouri football team wanted, they got, and they never struck. Nothing happened. They never stroke. I don't think stroke. I don't know what the past tense of strike is. But nothing happened because the NCAA would cape. And this is, again, a team that nobody really cares about. The Missouri, I think they're Tigers or something like that. I should look it up, but I don't care. But imagine if you got 2 or 3 teams, some good teams, Clemson, LSU, and said, hey, you know what? We're not going to play this year if we don't get whatever. Or forget the whole team. Just put out a petition. Put some coaches' names on there because there's some coaches who pretend to give a damn, and they don't, about players not getting paid. They could have fixed it too. Put all their names on an email and say, hey, we're all the players and coaches and AD or whoever it is. And we want the system changed. And if you don't do anything, and here's the thing, you send the email like before the season starts. You're practicing, you're in camp, the kids are in camp, doing whatever the hell they do. And then send the email to the NCAA. And then don't say anything. Say 2 weeks before the season starts, this is what we want. And put whatever the hell you want. Money, milkshakes, bunny slippers, who cares? Whatever you want, just put it on the list. And then just say, hey, listen, 2 weeks before the season, this is what we want done. And see what they do. I guarantee you will never have to miss a day of practice. Right? The media gets a hold of it. They're talking to you, might just say, nothing. It's all on the email. Everything you want to know is on the email. Don't say anything about it. We got to get back to practice. We're going to have a great season because we know the NCAA is going to do what we ask them to do. And then don't say anything about it. And I guarantee you, if it doesn't happen, then just don't show up. Just nobody show up to play. I guarantee you. Listen, long before that happens, you would get whatever you wanted. Because unlike what you hear in the media from some of the knuckleheads, it's not like slavery. See, here in the NCAA, these kids have all the leverage, 100% of it. Nothing happens in college if these kids aren't playing football and basketball. That's where all the money comes from. Most of it from football. I don't know, hardly any comes from basketball, but that's where all the money comes from. And if you don't like that idea, listen, play the season. Right? And then when you get to the Final Four, say, hey, guess what? We're not playing the Final Four. You know how much money that's going through back and forth through Vegas and all these betting systems? Billions of dollars on the Final Four. You don't think the NCAA would say, hey, whoa, fellas, we were just joking around. What do you want? We'll give it to you. Of course they would. And that's my point. All the leverage, this is not slavery, this is business. It's just business. And the players have all the leverage. What they're lacking is will, desire, and courage. Because I really don't think that they're that upset about it. I really don't think they are. I don't think their parents are, because they keep sending them to the schools. So I don't think they're that upset about it. But if they were, and they had the will, and they had the courage, they did whatever they want. What would the NCAA do? What would they do if a whole team just didn't show up 2 weeks before the season started? Just didn't show. What would they do? They'd give you everything you wanted. That's what they would do. So that's my idea. That's my take on the whole NCAA, getting paid, getting not paid system. Okay, there are no slaves out there, right? There's no Harriet Tubmans at Duke. This isn't, for some reason, every time something bad happens to a black person, we want to go back to the 60s every time. Somebody's being kind of a deadbeat at Starbucks, and then you've got a manager who's being a little pedantic about the rules for some reason. And now we're back, it's Selma all over again. And no, it's just one, couple of guys kind of being jerks. And then you got a manager who's being kind of a nutcase that day too. That's really all it is. It's not slavery. It's not racism every time. But for whatever reason, and I think it's pernicious and immoral, that every time there's some gripe between somebody and somebody black doesn't get something they want or something happens wrong for them, oh my gosh, it's slavery and racism all over again. That's all we can think about. And oftentimes that's not the case. And the bad thing about calling everything that happens bad, and I'm talking about black folks this time. I'm talking to the black folks and the guilty white liberals now. If you went to the doctor and the doctor said, hey, you're feeling bad or you're not feeling well, and the doctor goes, you know what, you got cancer. That's a horrible thing. If you haven't been personally affected by it, you know somebody who has. It's a horrible thing. And then you go out, and you go, listen, I'm just going to go get a second opinion, just in case. So you go to the next doctor, and he talks to you, and you tell him what's going on, and he does the examination. He goes, oh, you got the flu. He goes, are you sure? Because the last doctor told me I had cancer. And he goes, well, what doctor was that? You tell them Dr. So-and-so. And they go, oh, yeah. Well, that doctor thinks everything is cancer. That's the only diagnosis he gives for anything. You can go in there with a broken leg and he'd tell you got cancer. That's what it is when everything is racism. There are some people who, no matter what happens, no matter the circumstance, if it's black folks who are not getting things exactly the way they want, it's racism. That's the only diagnosis. And these people are like the doctor who only thinks cancer is the... And here's the thing. If you get misdiagnosed, even if you didn't have cancer, you could have something that's readily treatable. But if you're not getting treated for that and you're getting treated for the cancer diagnosis, guess what? You die anyway. If you had diabetes or something like that and you're getting cancer treatment, you're getting the wrong treatment. It's not your problem. And a misdiagnosis can be just as deadly as the disease that you were diagnosed with if you don't treat it properly. And that's what's going on here. This is not cancer. This is business. And when you're in a business situation like these kids are, you got to figure out, well, what leverage do I have? If you don't feel like you're being compensated commensurate with the value you bring, you got to figure out what your value is and how much leverage you have. And if you have 100% of the leverage, like these college kids do, then you just use it. Don't show up. Go to another system that you like. Go to the music program. Start a business. Go to the... There's no end to the things that these kids could do other than play basketball and football. Pick one if you don't like the system that the NCAA has. And I guarantee you, before you missed one day of practice, they would be there with everything you wanted. Because what else could they do? What? Get mad at you? Yell at you? Then they could do. So that's my take on the NCAA pay the players debacle or whatever the hell you call it. It's much ado about nothing. You don't like the system, don't be a part of it. Or if you're going to be a part of it, then do what you need to do to change it to whatever the hell you want. But for God's sake, stop whining about it. That's what I'm saying. Do something about it or shut the hell up about it. And if you're going to sit there with your remote, taping all the games and betting all the games, or if you've got a sports show and you're going to talk about all the matchups and who's going to win and what kid you expect to do well, if you're going to do all that, then you also stop complaining about them not getting paid. Because you're getting paid from watching them not getting paid while you say it's such a horrible thing. So you're still collecting your money while they're not getting paid. And you sure as hell ain't giving them any part of your check. Right? So all the Nick Wrights and all the Max Kellermans who are going to cry about it, and Jason Whitlock, you too. I love you, Jason Whitlock. But if you're going to cry about it, I want to see you do something about it. All right. I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll be back with the second part. I usually what I say at this time, I'm going to be back with the sports segment, but that's what the whole thing is. So I'll just be back with the second segment of the Uncolored Podcast. Thanks for listening. You can subscribe to the podcast. Oh, I guess I'm supposed to do that later. Well, you can subscribe to it wherever. Thanks for listening. I'll be back in just a moment. My name's Kevin Metcalf, and this is the Uncolored Podcast. Here's another unsolicited, unsponsored shout out to an organization that I think is pretty good. It's the Wounded Warrior Project. Please consider giving some donations to the folks down at the Wounded Warrior Project. You can find them on woundedwarriorproject.org. They do a lot of good things for our veterans, getting them integrated back into society, mental wellness, physical wellness, all kinds of good stuff, all kinds of good programs and things like that. So if you have time or resources, please consider the Wounded Warrior Project helping them out there. Yeah, that's it. All right, that's enough. Welcome back to this is the Uncolored Podcast. My name's Kevin Metcalf. This is this is a continuation of the All Uncolored Sports Podcast. That's everything today is Uncolored Sports. And I thought I'd do something a little bit different. because I seem to be complaining sometimes, and there's so many wonderful things going on in the world. And I thought I wanted to focus on that. You don't want to just be whining and complaining all the time and calling people out for doing the wrong thing. And there was something wonderful that happened just this past week. Not to me, but it's about, I think probably perspective would be the right way to say it. So my kids are old now. They're like, I don't know. They're not 30, but they're more than one of them. They're like 27, 28, somewhere in that area. I should know. And one of them lives in Portland. The other one's in San Francisco or in that area. And every once in a while we get together, not that much. But they were over this past week. And we were at my dad's house and just hanging out. And it's cool. I stunk as a dad. I was a terrible dad. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was young. And it always amazes me how well they turned out, despite having me as a father. Because I look at some dads, and they're always talking about their kids, with baseball this, and they achieved that. They can't stop talking about the kids. I love my kids, but I don't talk about them all that much. I know parents who were driving. I mean, on weekends. They're all up and down, Northern California going to, volleyball tournaments for their kids and all this crazy stuff. And my kids, we never did that. I mean, when we hang out, we talk comics and art and stuff like that all the time, and on the phone and things like that. But I don't know. I don't know. I'm always impressed with my kids. They turned out so well with me as a dad. So we were at, so after hanging out with my dad for a little bit, we went out to have some dinner, and we're sitting at the bar, having a burger or something. And we were just talking about different stuff. They're so smart, these kids. It's funny when they're young, you wonder, how they're going to do. And then all of a sudden they're grown-ups. They're more together than I was at that age. My daughter's married. She got a lovely husband. The guy's amazing. I was worried about my daughter because well, I shouldn't be talking about this, but she's a sweetheart. And I'm a dad, and I just knew if she met the wrong guy, I'd end up in jail. If she'd ever come home, Dad, he hit me, I'd go to jail. I know I'd end up in jail. And thankfully, I think she knew that too. And so the guy she's married to was just the best, sweetest guy you'd ever want to meet. Just a neat guy. I'm not sure if I may like him better than my daughter. I don't know. I'm kidding, sweetheart. I love you. But as we're sitting there, just talking about different things about life, what they're doing, and plans, and what they've done, and what's going on. I said, if somebody gave me, they said, here, Kip, here's $52 million or whatever the number. Just gave me $1 million for whatever reason. I told him, I said, I would have no illusions that I would be any happier than I was at that moment. When I'm talking to my girl and talking to my son, and, we're just drinking, having a couple of beers and just doing whatever. And I think sometimes we think, we get in this mindset that the next thing is going to make us happy, or there's something out there that we want, that, the new job, a new car, the new house. And I think sometimes it's difficult to remember that, that's not what it is. And with all the complaining that goes on in the world about this and sex and race and politics and all this crappy stuff, you can forget what really, really matters. And for the most part, none of that matters in the big picture. My mom used to always tell me, she said, if you wake up, and this is why I don't like I didn't get it because I was black. I didn't get the job because I was black, or I didn't get the thing because I'm a woman and they're treating me this way. I don't listen to any of that BS. And not that it's never true, but it's not true enough that I get tired of hearing it. And my mom used to tell me about making excuses for not, for not being happy or being upset about things. And she told me, she said, if you wake up and you have a healthy body and you have a healthy mind, she says, I don't want to hear no complaining. She goes, so you won already. You won that day. Because there's so many people who just don't have that. Listen, when you can go to work or have the ability to go to work, or if you don't have a job, have the ability to train yourself, to be employable, to have a skill, you've got everything. And there's nothing else that you can add on to you that's going to make you any more of a person, that'll make you any more happier. And I know I forget that. I forget that all of the time. And I'm glad my mom had told me that to remember that. And so when I hear people complaining about stuff, for people, when I start complaining about stuff, I always go back to that place where I think, you know what? Listen, if you're healthy and the people that you love are healthy, there's nothing more you can have. And so I saw this video that it was on, I was watching, it was on, I think the Colin Cowherd show. And a year ago, I can't put it on because it's the podcast, but I'll give you I'll put the link in the description here on the website. But Ryan Shazier, I think it was 2 years ago, he was a linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And during the game, he got an injury. I think it was a spinal cord injury. I don't know all the details. But he couldn't walk. He got carted off the field, and he's been having trouble. He's trying to relearn to walk. And there was some sports awards ceremony thing or something that he came out, and he was, you could see him, walking, with some difficulty out, and people were cheering him, and it was a wonderful thing to see. Just the ability to walk, even though he was still, greatly impaired. But I saw this video, and it's a YouTube video, and he's in a gym, and he does this box jump. And if you look at this thing, this box jump, it's got to be. Hold on for a second. I'm looking at the box jump here. It's got to be 30 inches. Which is, it's almost the size, if you have a desk or a kitchen sink, or not a kitchen sink, but like your bathroom sink, maybe it's lower than that. It's not that big. But it's big. Because I do I've been doing the CrossFits for a few months now. And at the gym that I go to, they got these box jumps, and you can flip them. So you can do it at 20 inches and 24 inches and 30 inches. And I think this is a 30-inch one. Because it's higher than what I do. I tried the 30-inch one once. I mean, I could do it, but they'll have you doing you got to do 50 times. And I know I could probably get 4 or 5 of them out. But if you fall on the box jump, it never ends well. So I always go down to 24 inches. But it looks like a 30-inch. And this guy who 2 years ago didn't know if he could walk, and unassisted, he jumps on top of the box. I'll tell you, man, I started crying. It brought tears to my eyes. Because this guy is, I can imagine how his life changed at that moment. Because, listen, you don't know. Whatever your life is at this very moment, you can get a phone call. You can go to the doctor. And you can have some very bad news, and your whole life changes. I know a couple of friends it happened to recently. It happened to me with my brother just a couple of years ago. And it's at those moments where you start thinking, boy, look at all the stuff that I've been whining about, and I've been worried about and complaining about. None of it matters. And here's somebody, Ryan Shazier, who, I don't know anything about him other than, what I just described to you. But I bet him jumping on that box was probably one of the most wonderful things that has happened to him in his life. Forget about all the accomplishments on the field. Just the ability to have his own mobility back has got to be one of the greatest things that has happened to him, if not recently, if ever. And is just one of those things. And, I'm sure everybody has one of those stories where, you're complaining about life or traffic or those kinds of things. And then something will happen and you'll see something and it recalibrates your mind. It recalibrates your emotions. And if you're smart and if you're listening, you remember, you go, you know what? Okay, my bad. I was whining and complaining about stuff that just doesn't matter because I've already got it all. I've already won. My mind is healthy. My body's healthy. The people who I love, they're healthy. That's all there is. That's all you can have. So, all right, that was it. I guess that was a happy thing. I don't know. I felt kind of didn't quite come off like I thought it was. It was more serious than I had intended, but it was so uplifting. I hadn't even expected it because I've seen the guy. I'm not a Steelers fan. I mean, I knew of him and I knew what had happened and was horrified what had happened. But it's not like I've been thinking about it every day, since it happened. And then when I saw that on a thing, man, it just, I don't know, man, it blew me away. I just brought tears to my eyes to see him to do better than I could do at the gym. And I haven't had any injuries. So I don't know, just an amazing thing. So listen, hope you enjoy the rest of the week. I appreciate you listening to the podcast. You can get it pretty much wherever. I stopped listening because I don't know where it's at anymore. So I stopped telling you where it is. But, iTunes and Google's got a podcast thing and Stitcher and I don't know. Wherever you get a podcast, you can probably find this thing. So please subscribe and give me any comments you have. You can email me at uncoloredmedia@gmail.com. That's uncoloredmedia@gmail.com. Thanks again for tuning in to the Uncolored Podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. And I'll come back in a week with another podcast. So this is Kevin Metcalf. Thanks for listening. And this is the Uncolored Podcast.